to już nic nie poradzę. O nie, tak jest, rzeczywiście. Raz, dwa, trzy. Raz, dwa, trzy, dwa, trzy. No i tak. Raz, dwa, trzy. Dwa, trzy. Raz, dwa, trzy.
Hello, everyone. We would like to welcome you at this last session. So we hope that everyone survived lunch and still have some power to listen to presentations. And we will start with keynote lecture by colleague of ours, Katarzyna IZYDORCZY.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to present our experience with the implementation of ecohydrology. Za wysoka. Mam nadzieję, że teraz będzie słychać. Teraz będę mówić dobrze. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present our experience with the implementation of ecohydrology in river basin management plans in Pisaca River Basin, which is one of Demosites of Unesco. Thanks to two projects, Life Plus EcoRob in the past and currently started integrated project Life Pisaca, we have a possibility to transfer scientific knowledge into practice. And first, I will say a few words about the Pisaca River Basin. However, I am afraid that all of you knows very good this Pisaca basin, but the area of the Pisaca is at 9,000 square kilometers. It's located within 5 provinces and 93 communes. As you can see in photos, it's agricultural catchment with almost 1/3 of the area covered by forest. The river has semi-natural character, especially in the several sections when the meandering course of the river has been maintained. Eutrophication. This is a particular problem in the Pisaca River, and the most visual and the most painful problem of water user is eutrophication of Suleju reservoir and occurrence of cyanobacteria blooms. It's a limit the use of reservoir in the summer period, and what should say that cyanobacteria blooms are a consequence of high phosphorus load flowing into the reservoir from our catchment area. It's also important that for the water quality in the reservoir is not responsibility not only the direct catchment, but the catchment area of almost 1,500 square kilometers. However, in recent years, a new problem has arisen, namely extreme drop of water level caused by the drought and also the limited water supply to the reservoir. It lasted for many weeks, showing what a new challenge we will have to face. The results of state environmental monitoring showed that in case of ecological status, we can speak of moderate water status in the Pisaca River. You can see on the map on the left that half of the water bodies marked yellow on the map were assessed as moderate. The chemical status looks worse. Only 17 water bodies has a good status. A map with water status presents a dramatic picture as none of 64 assessed water bodies is in good condition. To solve the problem, especially problem with eutrophication, within the EcoRob project, we developed an action plan for reduction diffuse pollution in the Pisaca River above the Suleju reservoir. This plan was created as a joint effort of various stakeholders. First group, it was regional water managers from Regional Water Authority in Warsaw. The second, it was interdisciplinary research team. And the last group, it was local water users. And we took as a basis 3 principles of ecohydrology, and now I would like to show you the steps. And as ecohydrology postulates, pressuring mapping and quantification of nutrient emission were the first step to prepare the action plan. At first, we identified and quantified the nitrogen and phosphorus sources in the catchment using the Moneris model. It allowed us to estimate the nutrient emission and divide it into 7 pathways. And as you can see in the graph, the model shows us that the agriculture is an important factor responsible for water protection. And this data was relevant, but we need more detailed data, which could especially show the areas responsible for emission, so-called priority areas. In cooperation with Professor Okruszko's team, we used the SWAT model to estimate nitrogen and phosphorus emission. You can see on the map to the left where the red color is the subcatchment with the highest emission. Next, we assessed the degree of water eutrophication, which you can see in the right-hand maps. What is important, the model allowed us to determine the priority areas in the catchment where measure should be implemented. It narrowed it down to 7% of the Pisaca basin, and if we go deeper only to the arable land, it turns out that we should concentrate our effort only on 16% of its area. Okay, the next step was analysis of spatial distribution of ecosystems. And today I would like to show analysis of 2 ecosystems. First of this is Oxbow Lakes. However, it was the beginning of the work of our research. We start analyze the Oxbow Lakes because in the Pisaca Valley, which play a multifunctional role. You can get more information regarding this work from the poster, which we warmly invite you to consult. And within the EcoHydrology project, one of ecosystem analyzed were riparian buffer zones, which are the top measure in reducing agricultural diffuse pollution. We conducted monitoring on selected, extensively cultivated meadows located between a rubble field and a river. And in summary, the high effectiveness in wider buffer zone, marked in the graph in blue, in reducing both nitrate and phosphate is visible. And finally, the next step is to find the answer to the question how the previously identified processes can be used to regulate the state of the ecosystem. The answer lies in ecohydrological biotechnologies as defined by Zaleski and Wiśniewski, which are now part of nature-based solution. And as you will remember from the earlier state, the plant buffer zone are an effective measure to reduce the transfer nutrient from land to water. Unfortunately, the pressure of agriculture and also tourism in the river valley and also around the reservoirs makes it necessary to increase the effectiveness by developing ecohydrological biotechnologies. As example of such solution are the developed and implemented highly efficient buffer zone in the Shirley-on-Sulave Reservoir. And here it should be emphasized that when developing solution, it's important to adjust measures to site-specific treats and needs. Okay. In the first Demosite, due to extreme phosphate concentration in shallow groundwater and because the limited life of buffer zone, the use of the only plant buffer zone should be ineffective. It was proposed to increase the effectiveness by enhancing the plant zone with a limestone-based barrier in order to increase phosphorus removal by enhancing the phosphorus absorption capacity. At the second demonstration site, due to high nitrate concentration, It was proposed to create the traditional plant buffer zone, which was enhanced by denitrification wall, and it was constructed by mixing pinus and sawdust. And these two Demosites are for 10 years place for classes, for students, workshops by experts and also local authorities. In the next slide, you can also see the photos from this exercise. The communication activities to promote the nature-based solution as well as cooperation with stakeholders resulted in another implementation in Pisaca Basin. Przedbush City asked to develop the solution for protecting the reservoir, which is important recreational place, but also which is supplied by highly polluted stream. And we proposed the sequential sedimentation biofiltration system, which was constructed 3 years ago. The cooperation with the local authority is fruitful. However, as you can see from this slide, it needs time because we started the cooperation in 2013 and the construction work was finished in 2019. It's a long-term process. Okay. Although our activities are focused on rural area, we do not forget about the cities. And in the newly started project, like Pisaca, we have planned activities aimed for preparing documents for 5 cities regarding the adaptation to climate change, as well as promoting small blue-green infrastructure in stormwater management. We hope that the following years, the implementation similar to this in Radom City will also be created in the Pisaca Basin. Okay. With priority areas identified and a catalog of measures in place, the next step is implementation. And however, the problem lies in the fact that it's not researcher and water manager who are the investors. It's up to local authorities, local communities, politicians, and NGOs to decide if and how the measure will be implemented. Their involvement is crucial and can include varying degrees of commitment. The Reconnect project developed the co-creation approach, and the co-creation process involves both researchers and stakeholders in different stages. It's co-assessment, co-design, co-implementation, co-evaluation, and also co-monitoring. And this co-creation approach is used during the cooperation with stakeholders of the Pisaca Basin. Because the capacity building for effective implementation of river basin management plan, this is the main objective of our project. Therefore, the first catchment meeting were invited local and regional authorities, institutions related to water management, agriculture, protected area management, which are listed in river management plan as institutions responsible for implementation of activity in Pisaca catchment. The meeting was placed to present the river basin management plans, the project assumption, but also for discussion and ice breaking. We hosted a balanced representation of local, regional, and national institutions. The next step was the regional workshops that took place in recent weeks. A separate meeting was dedicated to each of province in order to capture the regional differences in problems and needs. The workshop form was dominant here, which proved a very fruitful, as you can see in these photos. Important element that resounded during the workshops was the need for stakeholders to improve their skills and for thematic meeting with experts. Within the project, special attention is given to agriculture advisors It's for them that our partner in the project developed training materials and conducted trainings of water protection and fulfillment the obligation of nitrate direction. As a part of Life Pilica project, we will also continue a pilot program dedicated to agriculture high high schools, because we found a gap in the teaching program and a lack of topics related to the impact of agriculture on water and biodiversity. Therefore, we prepared various materials such as book and charts. What the students liked the most, however, were the practical activities. First, they participate in the workshop on Demosites in the Sulay Reservoir, and later they set up their own local water monitoring system in the place near the school where they expected pollution to occur. For a year, they were monitoring themselves and they proposed solution to the identified problem based on the results. And such involvement of students in the protection of water and biodiversity gives hope to change the behavior of young farmers and also build a culture of sustainable agriculture. On the other hand, it also shows how important it is to create demonstration area. And last, okay. And of course, interdisciplinary solution require an interdisciplinary team. That is why in this place, I would like to thank you, all people who participate in this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katarzyna. Are there any questions? Can I have one small question? On the constructed buffer zones in the Sulay Reservoir, what is the lifetime of such a barrier? Is it 1 year, 10 years, or? Thank you.
This barrier, the nitrification barrier, this is a long. This is like 15 or more. However, this limestone-based barrier is short. It's like 3-4 years, and then you should remove and change the substrate.
I only wanted to add, because Katarzyna is a very modest person, that because of excellent results of this EcoRob project, she got another one, which is a big continuation of bigger scale, and her work was really noticed nationally. So hopefully she will produce a strategy which will be kind of first example of what we can do with a catchment. I had to add it because she would never say it.
Now it's time to introduce the co-chair of this session, Dr. KINGA KRAUZE, who will talk about the to ally technology, nature, and society for successful urban water management. You have the floor.
Hello, everyone. So I'm too dynamic to stand in one place. In Athena's project, because that's how we called our project, and the author of the name is Pascal Braille, whom you met here. We consider that urban water management is indeed a wicked problem, and it has 4 features of wicked problem. So first, we have problems with dealing with urban water management because there are different values and perceptions. And Renata already talked about it, about the resources, about the space, about how it should be organized, how we should earn money, what is worth investment and what is not. Second, there is a knowledge uncertainty. And we have models, we have observations from the satellites and so on, but still there are so many layers of information, social, economic, ecological, hydrological, geological, and so on, that we are not so very good in making forecasts at that level. There is no final solution for two reasons. First, our solutions create problems in urban systems. Second, sometimes context is too dynamic. So whenever we apply solution, it's already too late and we need to modify the solution. And then there is no testing. And this was something which Professor Szolosinaji said yesterday. We have no time. We run out of time completely, and in cities we feel it even more. So these kind of strange problems required kind of different approach. And first thing is that we need to start dialogue with different stakeholders, but with consciousness that nobody of them will be satisfied and happy. We just need to give up on some of our expectations, so all of us will be moderately happy. And that's the target. We need to use long data series, socio-ecological information in place, local knowledge and experiences to combat uncertainty. For solution thing, we need to be ready to chase a moving target, and there is no other way. And we can do this through transsectoral collaboration and transdisciplinary research. And for no testing, let's use the history of our failures first, and let's use cross-site learning. And yes, in such conditions, it's very good to apply NBS. However, to apply NBS, we need to have a source of ecosystem services, as Ivona mentioned earlier, a source of inspiration, a source of water, a source of genes and seeds and everything else. We need to have transfer zones. That's, again, Ivona mentioned that we need green infrastructure to be a network. And we need enabling environment. And I think all of us talk about it here. For us, enabling environment, it's water, space, time, and societal choice. Okay, so we built our project based on two very powerful networks. One is a network of Ecohydrology Demosites, and another is a network of long-term ecological research sites, especially socio-ecological research platforms. Why we did it so? Because those two networks have kind of very specific characteristics which are very important to us. Ecohydrology Demosites demonstrate innovation, hybrid approach, linking technology with ecological engineering, biotechnologies, implementations, and testing, while LTR provides very long data series of very good quality from very many sites all over the globe, and is very much focused on extreme events and discrete events and trends, which are very difficult to spot at short time. So our project, we applied for the call on closing the water gap, water cycle gap. We applied with 4 institutions, 3 demosites, WOJCIECH in Poland, Vanta in Finland, and Lyon in France, with 3 different challenges about water quality in rivers, in suburban areas, in urbanization, which leaves no space for water, and with which struggle to sustain rivers and greenery, and 3 very flexible approaches. So starting from Vanta, to give you impression about the project, Suke has a very long experience in putting small NBS for flood prevention, drought mitigation, microclimate regulation, and habitat provision, like the one here, which collects stormwater from residential area. In Athens, we decided to broaden the scale. So we decided to start multi-criteria decision analysis with all the stakeholders of the area, just to create the vision of low impact development for the area which is green now, but will be developed. And there is no escape from that, because Vanta is a city where there is an airport serving Helsinki. So just to make first steps to secure natural resources there, to consider nature values, to identify needs of society, to assess risks and options, climate change mitigations, possibilities, and economic issues. So basically, this is a project which still lasts, so until the end of the year at least. So they developed two alternatives. The upper one is based on reservoir and wetland, the lower one on the number of reservoirs. First one gives priority to nature, second one to recreational areas. So there is still discussion among stakeholders, inhabitants, decision makers, which of those two options to choose, but both are good for stormwater management. In Lyon, we dealt with different problem. Due to degraded sewage system and stormwater system, suburban rivers are exposed to leakage of sewage and nutrients. So INRA used modeling to find out what are the runoff generating areas, where runoff accumulates, and therefore where to put constructed wetland to stop the leakage of nutrients to the river. So this was done, but still there is some pollution in the river. So in Athens, we use the same model just to establish porous ramps, which are kind of geological structures, very complicated in the way they act, but very simple and low cost in application, so that they use exchange of water between surface water and hyporheic zone to exaggerate the purification process. In Łódź, we have this strange situation where you can see a lot of water from rainfall in the street, and this is a river which is 10 meters from the street and it's empty. So it's a very strange allocation of water in the city. So here we use the same model developed by INRA to find out which areas generate runoff in the Łódź catchment. That's where we worked. Which areas accumulate runoff, and the dots indicate places where fire brigade has to intervene after each heavy rainfall. Then we put a spot on particular areas, tracing how the water is flowing and trying to find out if we can stop water transfer between generating and accumulating area. Simultaneously, people are really protesting against cutting trees, for example, or new developments. And if you look at the maps here, with dark green, we showed areas with high quality of greenery. With spots, we indicated number of people, so people density. And with red spots, how many people don't have access to high quality greenery, which means around 80%. So in Athens, we decided to do something about it, at least at the pilot site. In Łódź catchment, something like 50 meters from the river, there we spotted this very ugly square of 4,000 square meters, a very abandoned one. One is gone. Two are working. Okay. Okay, so we decided to change the space and to do this with people, just approaching them, asking, as Renata said, what they would like to see there, just picking up elements, explaining which element is doing what there. So here we decided to establish flowering beds for pollinators. We planted 72 shrubs and trees together with people. We built together with FPP and Viro. In fact, FPP and Viro built those beautiful rainwater gardens, 3 of them. Then we established the first piece of living furniture in the city, and the next one will be established in autumn. Then we put there some monitoring of weather, but also of soil conditions, to be informed when we have problems with drought, for example. Okay, so success story. As we are in session of success stories, we created Living Lab under total COVID lockdown. So we are so very proud of it that this is just the end of the story. But still, we managed to develop NBS alternatives. We managed to discuss them, and we managed just to implement them together with people. And this is thanks to already existing socio-ecological platforms, already existing connections. So this long-term and demonstration have a big, big, big meaning. So we reached implementation level despite of broken supply chains and prices rising and current war. We link up with business partners, and we hope that we manage to get so much engagement of stakeholders that they will keep eye on our implementations in the future. And we learned a lot. And now the sad story starts. First, we learned that what is green in the city is not green. So this is anthrosol. You can see that this is 5 centimeters of soil and 2 meters of brick. So this was the first time in my life when I planted trees with equipment, heavy equipment. Second thing, climate change. This is really like observing Red Queen theory. For those who don't remember this, Red Queen told Alice, we must run to stay in one place. So that's exactly how we operate. So in Lyon, we had problems with flooding, which removed porous ramps from the river. In Poland, in our square, we had rainwater gardens without water. So we had to really supply them with water, having plants in crisis. Second or third lesson we learned. We conducted NAS Canvas modeling. So we tried to find out who are the clients of NBS, what are the benefits, who are beneficiaries, who is the owner of the problem, who is in charge of dealing with the problem, where money should come from. So what we learned first is we have no idea where revenue streams are. So our vice director of ecology department told us about projects, yes, but to change reality in cities, we need to find revenue streams for private investors. And they ask simple question, if I put NBS, where is my gain? And this is something which does not exist yet, I think, neither in our law nor in our economic systems. So we have this hypothetical vision of what could it be, like attraction, maybe some tickets. And another thing is that the money could come from tariffs, taxes, transfers of money between projects and cities, for example, private investors. And those funding depends very much on external decisions, which is not good for a city, neither for district of the city. Two other issues is like depreciation costs are very important costs for any investment in the city, because city can put costs of maintenance into these depreciation costs. So it results in the fact that it's better to have hybrid solution than nature-based solution, because nature is cheap. And then nature needs to establish, while in our management practices, whatever doesn't work should be replaced by something else. Tree is not growing fast, should be replaced by another tree. Grass is not growing, should be replaced by pavement, and so on, so on. So where is the stability which allows the system to develop? I'm just finishing. And this is a complicated picture, but I would like to attract your attention to one point. Be very careful what you believe in and what you trust on. Because in fact, there is this, we developed different scenarios through fuzzy cognitive modeling, checking how these scenarios interact with drought, heat island, flooding, damage of urban greenery, river degradation, and so on and so on and so on. And the third scenario is very interesting. This conservative scenario. This is a scenario which is forced by citizens. Don't touch our tree, don't touch our greenery, our square, in our place. In fact, if we don't do anything to the city, we will not combat neither drought nor heat island. And you can see that in some places of this column, there are yellows. We are not able to deal with these problems just because nature needs support. What means that we need to act, and we cannot just conserve in changing environment. And this is a team, and I would like to thank you and invite you to our website. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kinga. Are there any questions? You did so well.
So let's introduce another speaker. This is MEIRE. We will connect via internet. Are you there? Are you there? Can you hear us? I think. So.
I want to summarize some of the work we have done
Oh,
on the scale
hello.
estuary, where we try to combine different functions of the river in a very highly urbanized and industrialized area. So the Scheldt estuary is part of the river Scheldt, which is only 350 kilometers long, and the estuary is running from Ghent over Antwerp through the Netherlands to the North Sea. And in the course of the years, there has been a lot of changes. And towards the future, of course, the potential futures are very unclear. We know the present state, but on the future, there is a lot of uncertainty how the system will look like. But what do we know is that the ecosystems, like an estuary, are delivering a very large number of ecosystem services, and that habitat loss over the past has been an enormous problem, both in estuaries and coastal systems worldwide, as in the Scheldt estuary, and this is a problem that is still ongoing. But habitat loss is, of course, leading to a loss of biodiversity, and a loss of biodiversity is leading to a loss of ecosystem services, which has consequences for human society, like floodings, which were very important in the Dutch Delta area and along the Scheldt estuary, loss of productivity, which was reflected in declining fisheries, deterioration of water quality, and so on. So the system is developing, we have some potential futures, but only a few of these futures are really desired futures. And from the book of Edward Wilson, we know in fact that protection and restoration of habitats is really crucial to sustain the biodiversity and deliver the ecosystem services to society. And he even says that we should protect half of the earth for protecting biodiversity and in fact also our human societies. So habitat restoration is a scenario that can lead to the desired futures. And the question is, how do we implement this habitat restoration in these systems? Very long we have been working, or restoration has been driven by legislation. The European Habitat Directive and Bird Directive have been extremely important, and they require the compensation of habitat loss in Natura 2000 areas. And indeed, along the Scheldt estuary, the different colors and lines indicate that nearly all of the area were indeed protected under the Habitat and Bird Directive. Which means that the loss of tidal marshes, for instance, for the development of a container terminal, which you see on the left, is compensated by restoring a former marsh, a marsh that has been used as a dump site for sediments, and that was a restoration site. This is one example, but many of these examples exist. And this restoration, which is driven by legislation, can prevent the overall loss of habitat. But it is only based on structural aspects. It has to maintain the surface of specific habitat. You lose 1 hectare of marsh and you compensate by a certain surface of marsh. Or it is to maintain a specific population of a specific species that are mentioned in the appendices of the directives. But the main question is here, are these restoration projects successful? And do they also impact the estuarine problems? Because the problem of an estuary is much broader than just the loss of a habitat. And in other words, does it lead to these desirable futures that we should reach? And the desirable futures in the estuary requires, among others, also a reduction in the risk of flooding, a good water quality, the geomorphological stability, a good productivity, but also space for recreation, for other activities, and also for economic activities. And we see that the present management is very sectorial, either navigation, either safety, either the natural environment, and this results in an endless vortex which leads to a further tidal amplification, which is increasing the dynamics, which has an impact on geomorphological changes, which leads to the deterioration of the water quality. Indeed, we see that there is an increase in the suspended particulate matter in the estuary, which has an impact on the oxygen concentration, which has an impact to the biodiversity. Overall, a series of management measures that do not lead to these desirable futures. And so we have to move, according to our work, to a restoration which is driven by a functional approach, not by a structural approach, and habitat restoration must be part of the scenarios for an integrated strategy tackling the major estuarine processes, which requires, of course, an integrated approach, not just compensating habitat loss by the same habitat loss, but looking at the problems of the estuary and looking at solutions for overall problems. And this requires an integrated approach which should be based on the concept of ecosystem services, because ecosystem services is a unifying concept, and it requires the quantification of services, which is the supply side. The ecosystem is supplying ecosystem services, and on the other hand, as a society, we have a demand for ecosystem services. And what we see is that there is a mismatch between the supply and the demand, because that is the point where you have all the environmental problems. So the mismatch between the demand for ecosystem services and the delivery, the supply of ecosystem services is the fundamental point. And the paradigm shift that we have to make in our mind is in fact to see if we have an environmental problem, like for instance floods, that we do not immediately translate this problem into infrastructural works like building stronger and higher dikes, but to translate the problem into a demand for an ecosystem services, and then also see what type of habitat can deliver these ecosystem services, and can we try to restore these type of habitats. This means that we have to formulate also objectives, but these objectives should be formulated in a much more integrated way. So not only on safety, where you could say we need a level of safety, the risk of flooding is maybe 1 in 4,000, but we should also look that the tidal amplification in the system should stop. The nutrients should be removed from the area to reduce the load that is going to the North Sea. We might increase the delivery of silica by the marshes, because silica is essential for the primary production and should not be limiting for phytoplankton production. And the primary production should also be high enough to sustain fisheries. And so you can enumerate a large number of different objectives that should be attained by the estuary. So also maintaining hydromorphology to minimize the dredging cost and to create a resilient ecosystem to maintain water quality, productivity, recreation, and also the conservation objectives. But you see that the objectives are much wider, and we must determine them in a quantitative way. So the mismatch between the supply and the demand must be translated in what type of habitat do we restore at what point in the estuary. So instead of just translating in infrastructure, no, we translate in different habitats, delivering different ecosystem services. And let's look at the problem of flooding. Flooding is a major problem, and one of the options is to build flood control areas. Here you see a flood control area where the dike along the estuary is lower, and you have a ring dike near the city which is much higher. And during a storm, the water can flow over the overflow dike, over the ring dike, filling the flood control area. Like you can see in this slide, that's the slide that you saw previously, and it is very clear that you have a lot of water stored in the area and the village behind the dike is safe. This system is working very well, and in this graph you see in the upper line the predicted water level without, and the green line with the flood control areas being installed along the estuary, leading to a reduction in the high water levels of up to 80 centimeters. So it is really working fine, but only for safety. So we need to combine this with the broader range of ecosystem services, because flood control is for water quantity, but we have also the problem of water quality, and we must look for bundles of ecosystem services that are delivered and which lead to new concepts and management measures. And therefore, we developed the concept of a controlled reduced tide, which means that we have a flood control area, like I described before, but we add in the dike a small inlet sluice where at near the high tides a limited amount of water can flow in, so that we create a kind of small tide and still keep the storage volume of the area in case of floods to store flood waters. Here you see where you have the level of the Leppenbroek, which is a former polder that was embanked many years ago, and you see the tidal variation in the Scheldt now, and the upper level is where we have the tidal marshes now. By manipulating the tide, we create a restricted tide in the Leppenbroek, where we see that also the soil is being covered by water during the spring tides, but overall we see a reduction of the tides with more than 3 meters. And we keep the spring neap tide variations in the site. And this is delivering all of the expected ecosystem services. The water flowing in has a lower oxygen concentration than the water flowing out, so it is, you can call it the lungs of the estuary. And also we see that the water that is going to the outflow is enriched in dissolved silica, and we see also that if we look over the years, that each time there is a net retention of nitrogen, on average 5 kilograms per tide, also important for water quality. And we see also over the time there is a certain sedimentation. In these lines you see for several measuring points over the years the level of sedimentation, which is important because we measured also the amount of carbon in the sedimentation, and we see that we have a carbon sequestration of about 700 grams of carbon per square meter per year, which is way higher than what is found in the literature for salt marshes. So clearly these habitats are delivering a lot of ecosystem services. And we integrate all of these in a plan for the whole estuary, so we determine the optimal spatial configuration of the required habitats to deliver the ecosystem services from which we knew that they were still not delivered at the level to solve the problems in the estuary. And here you see that along the system a lot of different projects are being realized. The concept of this controlled reduced tide is now realized at many different places. Here you see an example of the Bergenmeester, which is just being implemented. You still see the remnants of the agricultural area. The flood control of Kruibeke Basel-Ruppermonde, which is more than 700 hectares long and large. You see the water incoming in the big sluices of the polder of Kruibeke. Here you can see during a storm how the overtop dike is being flooded, so the water is entering the polder for safety. And here you see an overview of the polder when it was for the first time flooded during a storm surge. But it's not only this controlled reduced tide, we also have managed realignment. And here you see a first project of managed realignment, that the former agricultural area was completely returned to a tidy marsh, a project that has been replicated at other sites as well. That is the potboulder of Lilo, where you see that some former areas have been again subjected to the tides. Also, the managed retreat in MEIRE is another example. And we see the very big area of the Hedwige polder, which is now being realized, which will add in the upper part. You still see the agricultural area, in the lower part an artist impression of how it will look like after the dikes are breached by the end of this year. This is just a sketch of how it will look like. So we see that over the time we had a loss of ecosystem services. We had a huge estuary with a large structure and a large function, and that was degraded to an area with little structure and little function. Going back to the original situation is of course not possible, and we need to develop an area in the limited space that we have, in the limited structural space that we have, to create habitats that deliver as much functions as possible by combining different ecosystem services, or as many ecosystem services as possible in individual areas. So we move towards a desired future by adding different habitat types, which is very important, but it should be an adaptive management, because we do not really know exactly what will be the outcome of all the projects that we implement. So there is a very detailed monitoring, there is an evaluation scheme, and based on the evaluation, we can adapt our management in that way that we go step by step towards the desired futures in 2020 and in 2100. But very crucial is that we integrate the people. We do not only need to restore the nature, but we have to bring back the people to the nature and to give them the ownership of the projects, as you can see here. And quite a number of projects have been realized to improve recreation along the system, to inform the people, to bring the people together, to bring young people to the new areas that are created in order to get an ownership and a support of the broader community of what is happening along the estuary. That's also an example of information sessions, bringing art in the area and so on, just to bring in people. So we can conclude that we have to look at the whole system, that all compartments are interlinked and dynamic, and that the long-term trends are driven by human and natural driving forces, and that it is an essential part of the system that requires also continuous monitoring and evaluation and adaptive management. But a process-based approach should be much more important than a pattern-based approach. So a structural approach should be transferred to a functional approach, and a system-wide approach is necessary because that needs to cover the whole of the system and should not be limited by sectorial legislation. And habitat restoration is really crucial to reach the desired futures and should be part as an integrated approach with broad range of goals that have to be defined and a better understanding of the functioning of our habitats and the way they are delivering our services. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, so I think that it was a nice example of how much we are going to give up on our expectations, but we can still earn something out of hybrid solutions. Giuseppe, our next speaker, shall I introduce or you will? Okay, so our next speaker is Ignatius Sudapa. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Chair, Dr. Arduino. Nice to meet you again through this important event. So, could I share the screen, please? So I hope that the screen is already there. Could you confirm this, my slide?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I would like to share my talk today, Ecohydrological nature-based solution for broad scope of sustainability problems in Indonesia. But first of all, I would like to thank you to Professor Zaleski, Director of RG and team for the active contribution and facilitation of cooperation in implementing ecohydrology in Indonesia and the Asia Pacific region, and also the organizing committee of this important symposium. I think it's very, very important seminar for today event. So this is just the outline of my talk today related to water issue in Asia Pacific region and how ecohydrology as a sustainable approach for water resources management. And also I will mention ecohydrology demonstration site in Indonesia. As you know that in our region in Asia Pacific, yeah, and also in the world, water is our most valuable natural resources. Yeah. But several major issues related to the environment and water resources. Recently, of course, COVID-19 pandemic, week of water and sanitation services, flood and drought due to climate change, loss of biodiversity, increased potential for water conflict, and also environmental pollution. Yeah. And based on the distribution map, the COVID-19 pandemic touched all of 34 provinces in Indonesia, like in this figure. And what is the problem of water in Indonesia, in our country? There is imbalance of water availability in Indonesia, like Java Island has a minimum level of amount 1,600 meter cube per capita per year, while Papua and Maluku Island have a maximum level of more than 25,000 meter cube per capita per year. That's why we have to manage our water resources in Indonesia. Recently, we were surprised by the occurrence of flash floods in several areas in Indonesia, like South Kalimantan, Central Kalimantan, West Java, Banten, North Sulawesi, and also North Nusa Tenggara Timur, like this. Flood disasters are often preceded by land damage in the upper stream of the river, as shown in these photos, like in Katingan district and also Bogor district, my downtown now. And this figure shows a tendency to increase the number of floods event during the last 10 years, from more than 600 to more than 1,000 floods event. Based on National Board for Disaster Management record, natural disaster in Indonesia always cause enormous losses, of course, both loss of life, property, and infrastructures. This requires comprehensive prevention effort, of course. Yeah. And typically, most of natural disaster in Indonesia consist of water-related disaster, more than 87%, like floods, landslide, hurricane, drought, and also tidal wave. As a response to this disaster, we provide recent review in the form of popular publication in a national newspaper like Understanding Natural Phenomena, Preventing Repeated Flash Floods, Research Organization for Managing Inland Water Resources, and also Inland Water Resources Manage or Become Disaster Source. And this is important to understand more of water cycle. Understanding the condition of natural phenomena of water resources is closely related to hydrological cycle, like air temperature, wind speed, climate, and also weather are some of the main parameters affecting seawater evaporation into cloud, the intensity or frequency of rain falling to the earth, and also its distribution and time. So there are three main causes of repeated flash flood in Indonesia. The first one is land use change, conversion of forest, lake, river border, and watershed areas into agriculture land for settlement, industry, mining, transportation facilities, etc. The second one is climate change, of course. Extreme conditions are becoming more and more common, so it is necessary to be vigilant and take the necessary preparation and action, and also share awareness. It is necessary to avoid building settlement, for example, on the bank or border of river, lakes, water dam. It needs improvement of adequate water catchment policy support. So we can ask to ourselves, can flood disaster be prevented? It is possible, of course, or at least to reduce the frequency and impact through serious concerted efforts, like improving perception water is a natural resource that must be managed wisely and sustainably, understanding natural phenomena that are often repeated, followed by optimizing the use of data and information, development of a prediction and early warning system, and a comprehensive and sustainable approach based on ecohydrology, adequate policy support related to the management and utilization of natural resources, including water, and finally, real action in the field, as well as collaboration and from all parties, for example, like revitalizing rivers, lakes, dams through cleaning and dredging water bodies and restoring ecosystem function, etc. The important to strengthen the role of different stakeholders, like utilization of data information from meteorology, climatology, and geophysics agency to support preventive action, policy and management supervision, utilization and land use across ministries, certainty of spatial planning, zoning, and land function, research, innovation, management, and technology, development of early warning system, and human resource and institution, supervision, implementation, and law enforcement, and also awareness and compliance with applicable laws and regulation. So Asia Pacific Center for Ecohydrology as UNESCO Category 2 Center, hosted by Indonesian government since 2011. This center has duty and function to identify issues of water resources problem and its potential solution based on ecohydrology. We have 4 divisions, like research and development program, capacity building and collaboration, database and information system, and also culture and public awareness. So for ecohydrological principle were used to support sustainable water resources management. I believe that already mentioned by different speakers before, like hydrology, ecology, ecotechnology, and also the importance of cultural aspect in our region. So this is example of water-related problem should be addressed around the ecohydrology demonstration site. like high risk to flood due to the shallow effective soil depth, high risk to landslide and soil erosion, and also high risk to pollution from point source and non-point source. Ecohydrology demonstration site is used as a tool for ecohydrology application dealing with water issues. Yeah. The Saguling Ecohydrology demonstration site was established as UNESCO 21st demo site in the world. The Saguling Ecohydrology demo site serve as best practice to increase the ecological potential of reservoir basin, mitigate intermediate form of impact, achieve sustainability of river basin. And Saguling demo site is equipped by water quantity and quality monitoring tools like online monitoring system have been installed at the Cibitung River catchment. The equipment include weather parameter, ultrasonic, water quality, and also IMOS data logger. The important finding of ecohydrology demonstration site recently, a very high erosion at internal demonstration site area was recorded. It was closely related to increase of river water turbidity. The development modeling system may predict water and sediment yield, soil erosion and deposition source in good performance. Phytoremediation ponds contrasted in demonstrated their ability to improve water quality through turbidity reduction. And finally, understanding and taking into account community characteristics will greatly assist ecohydrology concept implementation. So this is to show you different result like recorded data of rainfall, water level, and turbidity during extreme condition in Cibitung watershed, and application of the calibrated and validated rainfall runoff sediment model at the Cibitung River catchment area. And also we fill the ecohydrology demo card as representing the condition and progress status of the site. And the full paper as comprehensive result and discussion were published in recent article in the Journal of Ecohydrology and Hydrobiology with the title of Implementation of Ecohydrology to Support Sustainable Water Resources Management in Tropical Region Indonesia. And we prepare in progress for publication with the title of Strengthening Public Green Open Space Management based on Ecohydrology Approach in Kalijodo area, Jakarta Province in Indonesia, in collaboration with Professor Zaleski and several authors in Indonesia. So just to show you recent joint publication with different institutions in Asia Pacific region. And as conclusion, 4 important steps to strengthen natural resources sustainability consists of improvement understanding of Indonesia's natural condition and phenomena, including the water cycle, intensive searching data, relevant reference, as well as a comprehensive and sustainable approach and reinforcement of local action needed. Ecohydrology as an important approach for sustainable water resources and ecosystem management. And finally, completion of step through strengthening support from the government and stakeholder. I think that all is what I would like to present, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sutapa, for this comprehensive presentation. Are there any questions to Dr. Sutapa? Not so far. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And also for the late hour in Indonesia to have joined us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker will be Marco Albarracin. Marco, are you there?
Hello, Dr. Arduino. Nice to see you
Oh,
again. Nice to
very
meet
nice
you.
to hear and see you. So Marco will talk about ecohydrological approach to restore ancestral cochas and tajamares of Pisaca Hill, water sowing and harvesting in Catacocha, Loja, Ecuador. You have the floor, Marco. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me see if this. Is it sharing the presentation? Hello?
It's
Can
coming.
you hear me?
It's coming. Wait. Working in progress.
Okay.
Wait. No. Not yet. We cannot see it.
Okay. It's working?
No, not yet. But maybe the suggestion is that you stop and you start again.
Okay. It's there?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
So thank you very much. I would like to start my presentation saying thank you to Professor Zalewski, Professor Chicharo, and also you, Professor Arduino. It's nice to see you again. And thank you very much for include the presentation in Ecuador. So hello from Quito, Ecuador. My presentation will be about the demosite, one of the two demosites we have here in Ecuador, that one in Loja, Ecuador. The name of the presentation will be Ecohydrological Approach to Restore Ancestral Cochas and Tajamares of Pisaca Hill, Water Sowing and Harvesting in Catacocha. It's a joint work with some college here from Ecuador. I am the executive director of Ecohydrological Foundation. So the contents of my presentation will be, firstly, we will see some demosite context. Later, how we use the ecohydrological and the formula WBSR and CE as solving problem approach. Later, we will see water sowing and harvesting for life and a little conclusions about this demosite. So firstly, as Dr. Elfitri said yesterday, we have a very good network of demosites around the world. We have 7 here in Latin America and the Caribbean, and we have 2 in Ecuador, and we are trying to present another one maybe in this year, uh, uh, and others also in Peru, Bolivia, and Chile that we don't have there some demosites. And we are talking about join the sowing and harvesting systems here that is typical in the Andean mountains that will be or could be part of the network ecohydrology demosites. So we will be talking now about the demosite named Paltas Catacocha. Firstly, we have to understand how it's working the hydrology and the climatology here in South America. As you know, South America has this big mountains named the Andes region that is in the western part of the of the continent. And also we have different kinds of climatological classifications. And here in the western part, we have the desert and arid zone. Here is the Ecuador, and the location of the Demosite is in the south of my country. The reason why the climate in the western part of South America is because the Humboldt's cold current that influenced the climatology here. So about the precipitation in the Demosite in the south part of Ecuador, there is just few months that is precipitation, no more than 25 or 250 millimeters of precipitation. The biggest is in March, and also we have a lot of months without any rainy. So the San Pedro Martir microbasin is the site in where the Demosite is located. As you see, is in the south of Ecuador in the canton Paltas, or the municipality of Paltas. The the microbasin has no something like 30 square kilometers. It's not a big, it's a microbasin, it's not a big basin. And inside the microbasin, there is the city of Catacocha. Catacocha is the name of the city, but it's very important to recognize what means the name Catacocha. It's a small city with 7,000 inhabitants, but the name came from the Quichua. Quichua is the language from the Incas, but the city was before the Incas arrived to the south of Ecuador. So Cata means the big and Cocha lake. So it means that here in Catacocha there were a big lake. Another example is Catamayu. Catamayu is the river, so the big river. Mayu means river. You can see here a picture of the Pisaca Hill and also the cocha. We are going to talk about this cocha or this lake. So a little understanding about the recent history of Catacocha. In 1960, there were Catacocha, the lake Catacocha in the city was dried up. It means that when the Spaniards arrived to this part of the continent, they decide to found the city Catacocha, and they dry up the big lagoon, the big lake. In the decade of 48 to 58, they decide to construct a new water system because the population is starting to grow, and they also dried up the second biggest lagoon named Pisaca, that one that you saw in the photo. Later, they decide to collect more water from a new site, so far from the city, with 30 liters per second. Um, at that time, they think that by growing eucalyptus, this famous plant from Australia, they will receive some benefits in water quality, but it was not. The eucalyptus dried up also the soil at that time. They grow 300 hectares of eucalyptus in the microbasin. So later, there were 3 years of drought. It occasioned the migration of some people from there because there were any rainy in 3 years. Uh, and it started a water crisis in 2001. The supply of water in the city was not more than 2 hours. Some people say that sometimes they receive only quarter of hour of water. So with this, they decide what to do. And the second part of my presentation will be how they will using ecohydrology and the formula WBSRCE as a solving problem approach. In the city of Catacocha, or in the part of Paltas, there is a lot of rock carvings from the Paltas. You can see here the rock named the Sun. That's one of the most typical rock carving from the Paltas. So this presentation will be a little bit more about the culture of this demosite, but you will see also how is the hydrological principles working in the demosite. So the origin of the name Paltas. Paltas, you can see here a rock that represents a shaman in the pre-Inca Paltas culture. According to the historian Dr. Galo Ramon, he said this rock represents a shaman. And he said also that maybe the Incas, when they arrived to this place, they put the name of the paltas because palta means in Quechua avocado. And because of the shape of the head of this rock, of the shamans, they decide to call them paltas. But really, the shape is representing or imitates the Mount Pisaca, the big Pisaca. So the historians say that maybe the shamans used to change the shape of the head of the children, uh, trying to imitate this mountain. So you can here see the culture of the Partas is rich in petroglyphs and rock carvings. For example, here is the Pisaca Hill, and here is another famous hill in the site named Kango Hill, and the sun is just in the line that crosses these two hills, and also the shaman was found there. You can see here where is the Catacocha city located. There in the zone, another famous rock is this rock named the Snake that you can see here. That the engraved snake is a sign indicating that the rock has something to say, something is hidden in the rock. And the rock represents a complex system of wetlands. The rock is located in a big place conducive to large ceremonies. Apparently represents a micro basin integrating cavities such as lakes. You can see here the cavities. It insinuates the eventual elaboration of a didactic map to manage humidity. And maybe this could be the first 3D model of a basin in Ecuador, if you see here in the photo, and with a lot of wetlands inside. So maybe this was the milestone in where to develop the ecohydrology here. With this information and another more, they decide to start a program of water sowing and harvesting named Water Sowing for Life in the place. And we try to connect this project with the ecohydrological approach. You can see more information about it in a publication last year, and also we decide to put it in a Spanish version with a little more information. So what they do, they try to find where is some places to restore. Due to the water crisis, people searched for alternatives to manage the few water resources, precipitation in the area. After much searching, a site was found where an artificial lake was drained. You can see here in the photo this stone with some lines representing water level, and also the infrastructure for livestock here. This lake was dried up. So they started the restoration by the construction of a channel dock that is near to the Pisaca Hill. Out of the micro basin, they derivate water to the Pisaca Pond. So you can see here how is the lake now with a lot of water that is drained by the dock. And also, they decided to so you can see here some images of the turtle, how it was before and after the reconstruction of this cocha. You can see here in the turtle the lines of water, how it's changed in the time. They decide also to construct small cochas, not a big one like the Pisaca, another like this one that you can see here. Um, and they decide to put it in a lot of parts near to the Pisaca big cocha. So you can see here some photos of the cochas, and because of time, I'm going to do it a little bit faster. And also they decide to construct some tajamares that are small dikes in the intermittent rivers and ephemeral streams to retain the water. The idea is to retain more water, and then they would change the humidity near to these rivers and ephemeral streams. So you can see here some photos of the people working in the tajamares. There is more than 200, maybe 250 tajamares in the zone. And you can see here, we are trying to demonstrate how it's working. You can see here's a multi-temporal NDVI, and so this vegetation index using uh, satellite information, but we had some problem because Landsat 8 changed the Landsat 7, but you can see here how it changed in between April 2000, 2010, and 2020, how it changed the vegetation in the zone. Um, After it, with these very good changes in the vegetation, because they are starting doing reforestation using the water that is retained, they decide with the municipality to create some private protected areas, private and also municipal protected areas, like this one in green, that is bigger than only the micro basin. You can see here some photos in 97 how it was starting to cut or to to take out all the vegetation in the Pisaca Hill. And you can see here a Google map, Google Earth photo, how it changed the vegetation. And also we asked if it is different in the rainy season and in the dry season, to compare the multi-temporal and also adapting the NDVI with the SAVI index. So you can see here in 2000, there were not albarradas, not tajamares, but with the construction of these little cochas, the vegetation was starting to change, but also with the participation of people doing some reforestation and so on. You can see here the difference maybe is evident. You can see here another photos of the reserve in 2002 before the reconstruction. You can see here in the photo, it is the restored lagoon. At that time was dried, but now is a reserve. And you can see here not only the green, but also the points that mean with the vegetation. So in a way of conclusions, in 2002, they received 2 hours by day. In 2005, they decide to develop the basin management begins with reconstruction of wetlands. So in 2005, the Pisaca Cocha was restored. Cocha Pisaca restored in 2007 finally, and started the protection of the NCI foundation. In 2012, they grow the supply of water to 6 hours, and every year it's better the situation. In 2017, they received the first place of the Green Award from the Development Bank, and in 2018, we were accepted in the network of ecohydrology demonstration sites, and now we are doing ecohydrology there in the site. So just to the final message, I remember this presentation from Professor Zalewski using in the x axis, uh, indicating in where ecohydrology could be used. So not only where the nature is working better in the treatment efficiency, but also we can use ecohydrology before implementing expensive technology. But also we can do the same with water supply. And in my criteria, the sowing and harvesting systems could be here by in the idea to increase the fresh water for potabilization. And then of course this project is doing water for people and also increasing the environmental services, as professor from University of Amberes present before in this session. So thank you very much for your attendance and for my presentation. There is the institutions involved in the demo site now, and also some references. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marco. And are there any questions? We have a little bit of time because the next two, not one speaker is here with us, but the last two are not. Arnaldo has a question. You're a companion of master course, no? Because Marco was also the first batch of the Erasmus.
Yes, hello. I think we are separated for 1 year of studies, but yes, we were doing exactly the same course. Marco, thank you for your presentation. Of course, I am very interested because it's kind of the zone. I am also from America, a little to the north. But of course, I saw during your presentation that you actually worked with local people. And I want to share my experience with, of course, the little experience that I have in my country is that in Guatemala, we also have a quite big group of Native Americans and Mayan community. And we have been struggle with the effort that it's very difficult to cooperate. So I want to know your experience per se, how it has been doing in these projects. How have you accomplished this? It looks like you have a very good communication and strategy with them. Is a very joint and combined community.
Thank you very much, Arnoldo, for your question. Nice to see you again. And thank you very much for all your support that you are always doing. Of course, the participation of people is very important. And I think that we just part of this program because the people accepted us. So I think the idea of the integration of the cultural aspects in this kind of projects is very important, because they started doing the growing of the culture. Because of time, I cannot present more information about how they works before with this historian named Dr. Galo Ramon, what he do in order to integrate the participation of people. So I think the maybe we are waiting for going a crisis. So that was the case in this part. They were in the water crisis because they didn't have water. They still doesn't have very good supply of water, but maybe it was the driver why they decide what to do. So it's a part in Ecuador that is very poor. They don't have enough money to develop, and also the state doesn't have taking care of them. So they decide to integrate the participation of local people, and then recovering the cultural aspects. They was not maybe in the way of the scientists how to solve these kind of problems. They accept the intercultural dialogue. That is very important because they don't understand well the Occidental science for giving some name. So they understand the way how they saw the nature. So we have to integrate these aspects in order to do. And there is a different levels. In the capital could be different, in rural parts different. So it's hard work, but I think it's very, very interesting how we can integrate ecohydrology with these ways of thinking of them. I hope to answer your question, Arnoldo. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, it's also to know that it's going on the same direction. I know that in our case, we will, if we would like to cooperate, we will have to start from this part, that cultural interception has to be managed, so we can both go forward into the same direction. Right? Thank you very much for your answer.
Here in Latin America, we are trying to integrate another cases also in Peru and Chile, and maybe I want to invite you, all the group of Ecohydrology for next year. We are going to do a congress about water sowing and harvesting, and we would like to integrate Ecohydrology in it. So maybe later we can discuss about it with Dr. El Fitri and Professor Zalewski and the SAC.
Thank you very much, Marco.
Marco, always we're looking forward for further cooperation. You are doing fantastic job.
Nice to
Congratulations.
see you, Dr. Zalewski. Nice for your invitation. Thank you very much.
So no further question. Thank you so much, Marco, again, and nice to see you. Bye.
Thank you, Professor Arduino.
You call me Professor.
Okay.
Someone that teaches professor.
Shall we introduce our seems last speaker? As two last speakers are not present. So it is Sani Naida Ahmed. The floor is yours. So now we are moving to another continent. This is there is a problem with the monitor.
Okay, thank you very much. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me start by thanking Professor Zalewski for the effort he has made for me to be here, standing before you and to present what I have for you. So, Prof, thank you very much for the wonderful effort you have put in. My name is Sani Dauda Ahmed. I'm presenting our study titled Performance Evaluation of a Model Constructed River Diversion Wetland for Improving Quality of Water from an Inland River. This is the outline of my presentation. I have a brief introduction, and then the context and the objectives, the location of the study, the methods, and findings. Then I concluded with brief conclusion and recommendation. As part of the introduction, as we are all aware, fresh water is a finite and vulnerable resource. Most of the discussion have mentioned that, but yet it's very essential to sustain all life forms. For example, this figure shows the total amount of water on the earth, whereby 99% of it is locked up in the sea. Only 1% of it is available as fresh water, but yet out of the 1%, 99% of it is locked up in groundwater, leaving only about 1% as surface water in lakes and rivers. So this shows the finite nature of our global water resources. Furthermore, global scenarios have shown that the world is faced with increasing need to improve quality of water. Most of the presentations have mentioned that due to human impact, pollution, such as the one we can see here, point source, diffuse pollution, discharge of waste into flowing water bodies, and so on. These are common scenarios, most especially in where I came from, Nigeria, and so on. And it's really an issue of threat to most of our water bodies. So, consequently, constructed river diversion wetland, sometimes we call it biofiltration systems, have been recognized as potential ecohydrology tool for improving quality of water in freshwater bodies. So in this study, we try to evaluate the potential of a model river diversion constructed wetland in improving quality of water from an inland river. To set the context, basically there are two types of river diversion wetland. We have the upstream river diversion wetland, whereby the wetland is constructed within the fringes of the river corridor, and water from the river is being diverted into the wetland, treated, and then released back to the river. And the second one is the in-stream river diversion wetland, where the wetland system is constructed within the river bed, and flow in the river has to pass through the wetland, treated, and then moves along. So these are basically the two types of river diversion wetland in practice. The objectives, the main objective was to evaluate the performance of the model constructed river diversion wetland planted with emerging aquatic vegetation, specifically typha grass. We utilized typha grass. And then specifically to assess the pollutant removal efficiency of the wetland system in removing the pollutant from the river Wiwi, which is an inland river in Ghana. Then secondly, to look at the varying effect of flow regime, vegetation density, how does these two parameters affect the performance of the wetland system. So the study location, River Wiwi is located in Kumasi, Ghana, between latitude 0 degrees 38 minutes and 6 degrees 45 minutes, and longitude 01 35 minutes and 01 34 minutes. It is an inland river which has a lot of pressure as a result of human habitation and then discharges from industries and so on. So a lot of pressure is on the river. It is one of the tributaries of the River Bra, and the catchment area is about 1,641 hectares. This is a map of the study location. On the left-hand side top, that is the drainage map of Kumasi, showing River Wiwi and location of Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, KUST. They are shown in the red circles located there. And then on the right-hand side is the map of the campus, and it's showing, you can see River Wiwi located with a black arrow, and the wetland side also indicated with black arrow. So that is where the wetland was constructed. What are the methods utilized and carried out this study? Basically, the approach comprised of 4 steps. The first step was to determine the operational parameters of the wetland, such as the sizes of the cells, the flow regime, and so on. And then the second approach looks at the wetland construction and how to lay out the setup. And then the third one focused on water quality monitoring and analysis. And finally, the fourth steps look at evaluation of the wetland performance. So these are basically the 4 steps adopted in carrying out the study. So as also part of the study, we analyze parameters such as temperature, pH, dissolved oxygen, electrical conductivity, total dissolved solid, turbidity, BOD5, total nitrogen, total phosphorus, fecal coliform, and we also try to see, can this wetland be able to remove heavy metals such as arsenic, cadmium, and lead? So in assessing the performance, we look at the wetland removal efficiency, and 2 basic equations were utilized. The first one takes into consideration the mass balance method, whereby the concentration of the pollutant together with the flow, as earlier presented by Pascal, I've seen that in his own presentation, consider the flow as well as the concentration of the parameter. While that first equation, we utilize it in assessing the inflow and outflow of the wetland system. The second equation only considers the concentration of the parameter. And we look at that, we utilize that equation in assessing between the inlet and the midsection of the wetland system. So findings, the wetland was constructed in this format. You have 4 cells comprising of plant in different densities. 3 were having planted typha in different densities. The last one, which is the 4th cell, is without plant and it serves as a control. Then 2 tanks of about 10,000 liters each were utilized to pump water from the river into those tanks and gradually release into the cells via valve, inlet valve. When they are treated, they are now released through an outlet valve and drained back into the river. So this was the setup of the system. And the next figure shows you the structure of the typical wetland cells we have constructed. It spans about 20-meter length with a width of about 2 meters, planted with typha grass. And in between the inlet and the plant, we left about 2-meter gap to serve as open water space. And also at the outlet, we left the same thing, and then we have some stones planted there. The key shows the structure of it. And at the bottom of each of the cells, we try to seal it with a polyvinyl layer so that to prevent infiltration from the wetland cells. So, the wetland operational parameters. Table 1 shows a summary of the wetland features. The aspect ratio was 10:1. The open water to vegetation ratio was 1:4. The nominal hydraulic retention time was 2.75 days. And then the area of each of the wetland cells was about 40 meters squared. Length of the wetland cell was 20 meters, width 2 meters. The volume of each of the wetland cells was 8 cubic meters. And then the vegetation planting density was 2, 8, and 12 stems per square meter within each the tree cell. So the first cell was having 12 stems per square meter, the second one 8, and the third one 4, and the fourth one is without any plant. So table 2 shows River Wiwi flow regimes and the wetland inflow rate. The River Wiwi flow regimes was determined based on the rating curve of the river. So the flow regime within the river was classified, and based on that, we determined the inflow rate of the wetland system, and also classified based on low, moderate, and high flow. Based on the inflow rate of the wetland system, we also determine the hydraulic loading rate, which are shown equivalent to each of the flow regime within the wetland system. So performance of the wetland system. Interestingly, we discover figure 5 shows the removal efficiency of the wetland cells at mid, and then later I will present the outlet section. We can see from the graph that the wetland was able to appreciably remove some of the pollutant. Like, for example, we can see turbidity was reduced drastically. About 80% of it was reduced in some of the cells. Also, fecal coliform was also reduced greatly, and then we also have total nitrogen, while some of the parameters low. But then at the outlet section, a more elaborate removal was obtained, and when you compare it with the midsection, the outlet section appears to perform better, and we can see the removal efficiency there high, and some of the parameters outlined. So this is under high flow regime. The next one is the performance under moderate flow regime. The same pattern was also obtained, and then at the outlet, the performance was higher than the midsection. And we can see cell 1 appears to do more well than cell 2, cell 3, while cell 4 has the least because it is the one without plant. And also under low flow regime, the same similar pattern was obtained, but then the performance at the outlet far outweigh that at the midsection. And then the performance here under low flow regime was higher than moderate and high flow regime. So these are some of the findings we have gotten. Lastly, interestingly, the wetland system was able to reduce some of the heavy metals we have targeted. For example, under high flow regime, arsenic was poor, but then cadmium and lead, the wetland system was able to remove some percentage of it. Then under moderate flow, we have high removal, especially with lead, and then appreciably with cadmium. But under low flow regime, the removal was a bit higher, and we can see from the diagram there. While cell 1 happens to have the highest removal, as we can see there, followed by cell 2, cell 3, while cell 4, which has no plant, was the least. So these are the removal efficiency of the system. So in conclusion, removal efficiency of the wetland cells are mostly higher at low than high flow regime, and at the outlet than in the midsection, except in few occasions, with vegetation density having effect on the performance of the wetland system. So most of the water quality parameters monitored, such as pH, turbidity, and so on, were found to be within the discharge standard limit set by the Ghana Environmental Protection Agency. And from the result, it is apparent that the constructed river diversion wetland system has demonstrated effectiveness in reducing the pollution load and improving quality of water from the river. So lastly, we recommend that management and restoration of freshwater bodies like the river Wiwi should make the most of opportunities that arise from using ecosystem properties to enhance self-purification capacity of river systems for water quality improvement. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Maybe online questions. Okay. If not, I would like to thank you very much. And I would like to say that it was fantastic to hear those success stories after 1.5 days of listening how much we are frightened with external conditions. So there is some hope that we can change the situation, and I hope it will be reversed butterfly effect. So maybe with small changes locally, we can create a big improvement globally, hopefully. And I would like to say that out of this success story, we learned that people can do a lot. So this is basically a very important thing to engage even those less powerful, as Arnoldo said, and then our presenter from Ecuador, that even those local indigenous communities have a lot of knowledge and a lot of capacities to act, especially if they see the target, the goal. Giuseppe, would you like to say something?
I don't have much to add, only to thank all the presenter. We had different situations from all over the world, from Europe to the Far East to Latin America, Africa. It's very enlightening, as you said. There's a hope, so let's work in that direction, because otherwise bad news are always quite depressing and frustrating. But I think there's a good momentum, and I think Ecohydrology can solve a lot of problems. Needs to be taken on board by different entities, and that's why work is so hard in the dissemination of this concept. But I think that we reached points. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, asking.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, hello again. Matthias Wansen speaking on behalf of UNESCO Chair River Culture. I was very enchanted by your presentation, Marco, and I would like to ask you a question, but also on the entire panel. We are talking here about water security, and I think in this context, we have to discuss very clearly the question of how retentiveness in catchments can be achieved. And your example of a river culture traditional to Ecuador is one example how this can work, how retentiveness can be re-established by using traditional methods in the ecohydrology approaches. There are nature-based solutions that act also not only for purifying water, but also for retenting water. But what we see in the big picture globally is, and Piotr Parasiewicz has shown this very nicely with the AMBER results, is that we are building more and more and more dams, and we are deviating more and more and more water from one catchment to another, but we are not trying to make the best in terms of ecology and ecosystem functions out of the water that is available within the basin. And I would like to ask you, Marco, what is your suggestion how to maintain the water in the catchment without damming and without interbasin water transfer? And I would also like to ask the rest of the audience or the panel to make statements about it. How can we avoid further damming in the context of climate change? Thank you.
So, Carl, nice to meet you, and thank you for your question. we are doing a lot of efforts to recover the ancestral knowledge. Uh, I belong to a network of sowing and harvesting, water sowing and harvesting, Ibero-American sowing, water sowing and harvesting. It is lead from some college from Spain, and there in the south of Spain, in Granada, in the Andalusian region in Sierra Nevada, they also have some interesting uh, methods for water management. Um, we are clear that the construction of dams could be a solution in some cases, but not always. We can use another, not too much invasive solutions like the cochas, like managing in Chile and Bolivia, in Peru, they use bofedales. That's another kind of water management. So, hydrological flow they are using. And also in Lima, in Peru, you know, the capital, that more than 10 million people, they have problems with water because it's a big city in a desert. And they are using also the amunas, that is another kind of traditional way of using water or moving water from some place to another that's not too much invasive. And we believe that if we can put these examples of water using in the network of Demosites of ecohydrology, we will we will have the possibility of sharing this knowledge, but not only using the great infrastructure, because as we know, sometimes could be invasive. Sometimes maybe could be the only way to provide water for people, but we can use another kind of solutions like cochas, amunas, acequias de careo, etc.
Yeah. Thank you
I
very much.
hope
I think
I hope to
you
answer your
should make
question.
an overview of these different techniques. I had a presentation by Anna Zaralobit also on some other examples from Ecuador for the river culture book. But I think you should really make a kind of survey of it and to see what is done in this context at the international level. There is also the Canary Islands, and you already mentioned Spanish techniques and so on. But we should see how to combine these traditional ecological knowledge and these low impact management with eco-hydrological solutions to avoid further damming.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions and for this discussion. And now I would like to pass the voice to Professor Zaleski to finally say something about the outcome of the conference.
Well, thank you very much. I think the chairman of the session will summarize very briefly, 3 minutes, the most important emerging conclusion. Yeah? And first, I would like to ask Andras Solos-Nudge to summarize first session. Andras, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maciej. The first session was basically the introductory session that was supposed to set the context. While some 20 years ago, the profession, the ecologists and the hydrologists together, were crying out that a crisis is looming, a water crisis is looming. Today it's not looming anymore. It's here, it's with us. This was one of the important messages of the session that we ought to perhaps send over to the political community, because this is time that the politicians learn that this is a serious thing. Not necessarily in Europe, but also we heard that in many cities there are problems with floods and droughts and the speeding up of the hydrological cycle and all the rest. So basically what this session did was trying to put the whole conference into the context of the ecohydrology program that has started, well, I dare to say some 30 years ago, after the ecological community and the hydrological community didn't talk too much to one another in terms of UNESCO programs, the Marine Biosphere and the International Hydrological Program. Marine Biosphere program started the ecotone, the border zones between two ecosystems program. And then later on, the whole thing went over to IHP, and IHP has developed the Ecohydrology program, which contributed to a slow paradigm shift, which we are seeing. And the big result is that we are seeing that amongst the engineers. The engineers who were always thinking of concrete, not concrete terms, but concrete structures, large reservoirs, large dams, even for small rivers, where ecosystem services can do a much better job. So that marriage, if I may say, proved to be very useful. And of course, as couple always do, they were fighting a lot, but something come out which is very useful. And I think I should pay tribute to Professor Zalewski, who was really an engine behind this whole thing that led to the establishment of a number of centers in Asia, in Portugal, in Latin America, a number of chairs. So somehow the message got through. The important thing that was coming out from the session, and perhaps this ought to be somehow included into the message the conference is sending out to IHP and then later on to the political community, because what we have is an intergovernmental program, is that we need to summarize the past 2 days in no longer than 2 pages. Politicians can't read more than 2 pages anyway. So the principal message is that there is a water crisis, Ecohydrology can help to solve it, and send this message over to the upcoming intergovernmental conference of the United Nations next March, World Water Day, where science ought to be heard. And this session made a fundamental contribution to that, and I should like to thank all the speakers who contributed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I would like once again underline that Professor Andras Stolosinaji was the person, decision maker, who really started the Ecohydrology Intergovernmental Hydrological Program by his decision and vision. Now I would like to invite Dr. Elfitri Rahman and Professor Kiedrzyńska to summarize briefly the major conclusion from the session. If we may, 3 minutes.
Okay, so from my side, thank you so much for the Zalewski also for inviting me, especially on behalf of UNESCO ISP, to be part of the co-organizer of this important symposium on ecohydrology. So we are very happy to be part of this ecohydrology initiative, of course. And as I mentioned in my presentation previously, we are encouraging to all participants here, all countries, all experts are working on ecohydrology to be part of our ecohydrology initiative also, which is through establishing the new ecohydrology demonstration site in your country or in your respective areas, so that we can work together further later. So, and we would like also to welcome to collaborate with us in UNESCO in any ecohydrology related activities. And I must confess also that this symposium already showcased many ecohydrology initiatives and also specifically on the river basin area for sustainable water management. So Edita will summarize more detail on the specific section.
Thank you. So my conclusion is that we are moving out from Holocene, and now we are going to the new geological epoch, to Anthropocene. And I think this is a scientific journey on the challenges facing humanity in the global phase of sustainability. And therefore, we need nature-based solutions, we need ecohydrological solutions, ecohydrological biotechnologies. We need also ecological engineering. And of course, important is cooperation with scientists, with decision makers, with law and politics, because this is crucial element of our actions and to go into the sustainability future. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would like to underline this session summarized such nicely was entitled Enhancement Sustainability Potential. And I think the world to always remember that always there was in past conservation. And ecohydrology said not enough. We have to regulate processes for enhancement. And this is a work which we are trying to do. Of course, we don't want to create the Frankenstein ecosystem. Only through understanding the water biota interplay, we can regulate system to get more resilient, and also to go in upper level natural oscillation needs, for example, productivity, bioproductivity, biodiversity, and all this resources. Now I would like to invite the chairman of the session, Policy and Law, Andrew Allen.
Thank you. I've got notes on my phone and not on the phone. Thank you very much, Professor Zalewski, for asking me to speak. And also thank you for setting up the third session on policy and law, because from my perspective, it was a very interesting session. There was a fantastic range of speakers. Normally, legal academics don't see contributions from people who are implementing the law, people who are interpreting the law, and academics as well. So it's really an interesting selection of people. I made a few notes that I'll quickly run through. We had some suggestions for solutions in the session. We also had some bad news. I think the first point I would make is that we were challenged about the need to think about other ways of thinking about how law can be approached. To get people to rethink what the relationship is with water and the environment generally. We saw that from Monica's and Bartosz's presentations. Are there ways of dealing with breaches of law that might be approached in a non-economic way that might benefit the environment more directly? Second issue, the question about having different approaches to the way that law works. Maybe giving rights to rivers, maybe giving rights to humans for water, but also the fact that it may not be necessary to implement those things, but just raising them as issues might be useful in terms of raising awareness more generally. We spoke about the importance of governance quality in achieving the SDGs, and the idea that if we don't have decent governance quality, the SDGs will not be met, especially in relation to IWRM, which we'll come back to. I wanted to refer back to the speaker from Antwerp that we heard earlier this afternoon. He mentioned legislation specifically because the land use for environmental protection was driven by European legislation. So I think that's an instant way of demonstrating the relevance of law and how law can be a vehicle for good. At the same time, it could go the other way. And so you could have a situation where the law has fallen behind the science. And then we come back to Andras's point about ensuring, first of all, that lawyers and scientists speak to each other, but more generally that kind of triangle between lawyers, policymakers, decision makers, scientists, etc., making sure that all of the communication between those groups works. And I think the wider issue of transparency more generally, again, going back to SDGs, IWRM is a key goal for the SDG 6. But without decent governance, IWRM won't happen. And then finally, the need to strengthen stakeholder engagement. I think that's been referred to a bit today as well. Just to make sure that the governance is properly inclusive and properly participatory, because it's not always that easy. Governance can help that to a large degree and create a degree of sustainability potentially, but it needs to have that decent implementation. That's all I'll say just now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we are coming to the river processes, and I would like to invite Professor Iwona Wagner and Professor Magnuszewski to summarize the session.
First of all, I would like to say that looking on the title of the session, I believe it was really a brave decision of the scientific committee to compose the session in this way, that we have such a big scales, such a different scales, and such a from very big spatial scale to very small scale of bacteria. And we had 8 presentations during the session. And I think to myself that, okay, luckily the COVID pandemic is over, but if you would like to find some similarity, the pandemic has affected the whole continents, millions of people, but the solution has been found on the level of human cell and the structure, DNA structure of the virus. So it's you can see that it's very complementary, and it's good to look on both dimensions from the scale of large rivers, and we had a presentation also covering the scale of cascade of reservoirs, one reservoir, scale of river channel, and then we had also interesting presentations covering the nitrogen transforming bacteria, so the really big complete coverage of the spatial scales. And I believe this is very, very important generally to think in this way and to look the solutions. Also, not forgetting about this other scales, because at the end this is some kind of cascade of processes. So this is what we observe in the ocean or in the Baltic Sea. The explanation can be found in very small scales.
Yeah, the scales is one thing that also, of course, brought my attention, that we covered large distances from catchment to the DNA. But the other thing that was interesting was the load of innovation that we had in this session. We talked about innovation in catchment scale, and Professor Pruszko was just basically openly reported the problems that we have with the modeling of the distribution of NBS in the scale and how can it be solved. And we were in the river channel with the innovation for the modeling of the habitat, new tools that may help in better and more efficient restoration of the fish communities, and the same also similar, I may say, scale from China, when we had the creation of new fish habitats in the tributaries on the cascade of the river. Then we stayed within the river channel and the reservoir with the innovative method for the assessment and monitoring of the cyanobacteria and different challenges that are related to that. And also two innovative speeches about the possibilities of using the bacteria, and selected the most efficient strains to improve the soil purification. We had also one presentation that had a little bit different angle from the more anthropogenic perspective. That was the presentations from Japan about the water resources used for different human use. So I would say scale was impressive, and then also the load of innovation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we are coming to health and rivers and ecosystem, and I would like to invite Professor Mankiewicz-Boczek and Professor Iwona Jasser.
So during our session, we come back to the first step according to the ecohydrology concept, because during the first step, we need to find the proper monitoring program of threats, proper methods for the describe of quality of environment. And therefore, this is important for the next steps, which finally help us to create of systemic solution based of nature-based solution. Therefore, I am happy that during session about the environmental behavior and health effect of pollutants, we could have possibility to listen presentation which gave us examples of threats from different continents, Europe and Asia. Threats with different sources, including specific compounds, mix of them, and also some effect of whole organisms. The next important story for me from this session, this is that we had possibility to listen about example of application of different methods for determination of threats, including molecular genetic analysis, but also microscopic analysis, application of biotest, and of course using of chemical analysis. In conclusion, for me, in my opinion, such diverse knowledge that we have obtain is essential for the future better design of threats monitoring. Because as I told you at the beginning, this is the first step, yes, and we still need to remember about it, that this is the key for the future our activity.
I would also like to add some details because what was important, we listened and we've seen various ecosystems. We've seen rural and urban ecosystems. We've seen ecosystems in temperate climate and medium size, European medium size of rivers and water reservoirs, and large in European scale rivers like Danube. Then we've seen problems and monitoring in large rivers, really large rivers like in Asia, like River Yangtze with cascade and water reservoirs. And finally, problems and ecosystems in arid environment, hot and cold arid environment in which the water resources are very limited. And this is kind of a different story when we think about water comparing with this temperate climate. So, and what was next thing that was so important for us? It is scale. I'm coming back to this, what Professor Magnuszewski and Professor Wagner said. It is scale, and this scale, as well as different usage of water, different type of water used, and also different expectations that are to water, they are very important, and they underline not only the need of monitoring, but also the relevance of the proper monitoring. So, and then they give answer or for possible management. And then what was the added value? The added value was the possibility to compare the threats, the pollutants, the issues, problems, and the way that we can already think about solving them, presented by different people from different regions, from different ecosystems. They somehow help to look or to put our problems and our issues in the right perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think we are looking always with great interest in this scale of gradient of scale, because just in molecular biology, in this microbiological process, is a great potential to increase efficiency of all the nature-based solution, and we really need it. Okay, now we're coming to the blue-green city. I would like to invite Professor Tomasz Jurczak and Professor Pascal Braille.
I think that it was a very good session, I think so, Pascal. And I have 6 points which summarize this session. The first, we haven't time to think how ought to look the city in the future, because we have to take action as soon as possible. It's mean now and here. If we want to see the adopted city to the climate change in the future. The second one, urban adaptation to climate change should be a main element of the city strategy in the development of the city, where the blue-green infrastructure is a critical infrastructure and fundamental for economy, for environmental, for politics and technological elements in the city. The fourth, we need more and more demonstration projects which can change mentality of decision makers, something like best practices. And the number 5, people integration is a very important element in the adaptation to climate change, especially in the city, involve the local community in the climate activities. And the last, very important also, synergy between the science, business, and management of the water in the city to give a positive development of the city. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we in fact in this session have seen a range of possibilities to develop the eco-hydrological principle from dense urban areas to our skids. So it means that we have a technical solution. And yes, we have to convince with Demosites for sure. But one aspect also of the session was the social dimension. So with the kind of questionnaire and statistical approach of the feeling of the people with water inside the city, the presence of the water. And I'm optimist, in fact, because time to time we need I note that we are in progress. So I must say that for sure we have to work on the side of policies and so on, but each country and each region and each city has its own rules, in fact, and it also depends on the person which are in contact most of the time, not only on the policies or regulations.
Thank you very much. There was another very important session because, as we say, cities are one of the most efficient tools, blue-green city, to reduce global impact. So we're looking forward to this. Thank you. And now I think the future, ecohydrology future, that's Professor Luis Chicharo and Paweł Jarosiewicz. We know the young people are always thinking out of the box and creating the intellectual challenge for all professors and vice versa. I hope we inspire him and providing way on the short path. Thanks.
So our session was about future young ecologists, and I would say that the future looks bright. So we have very well interested people, colleagues to share the knowledge with us, and we should pass the flag to them. What I'm going to do now with Paweł, so I pass to him. So please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, thank you very much. So our session, The Future of Ecohydrology, could also end with question mark, the future of ecohydrology. And I believe we were looking for this answer in our session, and I found one that I would like to share with you. So in my opinion, there are 2 pillars of our future, of our community. First of them is, of course, people, like you, but I think more about integration of the people all over the world. We had some great examples of integration, as from the International Society of Ecohydrology, presented by Professor Zalewski, or Student Association of Ecohydrology that I have a privilege to lead, which was presented by my colleague. And this was the one very important pillar for us. The second is the science, of course. And the science that Professor Zalewski also referred to, that young people, the youth, we can bring some new dimensions, new ideas. And this was also represented by our session, because we also had the chance to listen to some young scientists as Jesus, or including myself. So I believe that those two pillars, of course, they are connected very closely with each other. And this we can observe during this conference symposium, but also during actions of our association. And of course, also we can refer with our session to this gradient of scales. And this gradient was also represented by different levels of experience. And this is very important, that we should mix them. And here we had a great privilege during our session to listen to Professor Chicharo. Then we went to young PhDs like me or Jesus, and then had the chance to listen for a student's perspective, participants of this master Erasmus Mundus Master in Applied Ecohydrology program, for instance. And it was great, in my opinion, and gave me also the image of a bright future, as you said. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good then.
Thank you very much for bright future. And last but not least, I would like to invite Giuseppe Arduino and KINGA KRAUZE to summarize success stories.
So I would like to say that first thing which we learned is that we talk about skills, but whenever it comes to success story, we just act locally for global change. And this is something which we achieved in success story. We acted locally, so if you want to demonstrate something, start from yourself. And that's basically what comes out of this session, but also maybe that we have the greatest potential and power to change something just locally. Second thing is that we run through different NBS, from catchment to the river, to bypasses of a river, and so on and so on. So we demonstrated a number of NBS. Some of them protect nature, some of them support nature, some of them enable nature. So there is a nice gradient which we can learn from. Something which was not so much pronounced for me was biodiversity. I'm a little bit crazy about biodiversity. We talked a lot about water, we talked about climate. Biodiversity was also there, but not so very much pronounced, even if we said, okay, biodiversity is the key to adaptation. And I would like to say something which I read in The Economist a couple of years ago, entitled as Welcome to Anthropocene Message, and I love it. It says, humans have changed the way the world works. Now they have to change the way they think about it too. So it's quite good summary of Anthropocene. And I think that we talked in our session about how people learned about processes, how they apply processes. So we underlined the meaning of education. But education is a very long process. Demonstration is something which you need expertise for, and it's very useful because that's exactly helps us to change the way we think about the world we changed. But we started with law, and I think that still law and regulations can be a shortcut through many issues. So maybe we don't have time to wait for people to educate, to understand, to have enough experts everywhere, but with wise law, we can achieve a lot in shorter time.
Thank you very much. I don't think I have nothing else to add. And I would like to thank the organizer, Professor Zalewski, and all the participants. It's been a great experience, and we do hope to see you soon and to have more demonstration site and successful story. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the chairman. I think referring to major title, major challenge of our symposium, the question, water security, how to accelerate SDG. I think we hear from the reports of the chairman emerged 3 points. Yeah? First, that we need innovative ecohydrological nature-based solution. And one presentation today a little bit showing, which I do not agree, that they are low efficient. I said, if it's not enough science here. Example, when we were looking for the bioenergy plantation, and we put the willow, which is common opinion is willow loves the wetland. We put the willow on the slope, 20 centimeters below groundwater, 400 kilograms per hectare per year. 100 meters above, 80 centimeters groundwater below, 8 tons. See? The understanding that no mycorrhiza, because the willow growing like crazy if cooperate with fungi on the root system. So it's a small difference in groundwater level, and you have 20 times bigger efficiency of the measure which we apply. That's ecohydrological process, understanding interplay between hydrology and biota. And there's 1,000 of such processes to be discovered, to be translated in nature-based solutions. So first point, we need innovation. We need research on this, discovering such relations. Second, I think we all agree here, conclusion from very impressive policy law session, that we need new law. This will be big acceleration, new proactive law. Of course, we need scientists, lawyers, practicing lawyers, and so on, to start to work on it. Because now it's hard to get out of the paradigm. And if, let's say, punishment law is already a certain paradigm, why not to change the paradigm? There is a compensation of impact towards reduction. The impact can be some new approach in the law, which will accelerate the progress. And third one, I don't agree with KINGA that there is very slow process to change the thinking of people. I think that we have to start to cooperate with professional educators, psychologists, to cite the way how to Jones Row theory transfer into the mind of people. That everybody will think, okay, I'm in the shoes, the guy who will be leading 3 generations from now. Thank you for your excellent work with Nan, and I once again would like to say we will be preparing the special issue of Journal Ecohydrology. Each of us can read more in detail all the presentation or idea which are here, and I think cross-verified, and we'll be trying to prepare with a opening lecture speaker, Professor Andrzej Stolosinacz, with some cooperation, the kind of synthesis brief paper which will be introduced as suggests Professor Andrzej Stolosinacz in the very important meeting of United Nations. Thank you very much again. Sorry, I was so focused on the let's say on the scientific content, yeah, because that's my duty as a chairman scientific committee, that I didn't say the most important thing. You know, everything goes here smoothly. Why? Because we had a future of ecohydrology here, young ecohydrological scientists who were really doing all this a great but extremely important job to keep this meeting smoothly. So thank you very much for organizing committee and leader of organizing committee, Paweł Jarosiewicz, secretary of our symposium, who just was mastermind of the arranging all the quite complicated here solutions of our session. But also I would like to thanks for the team who was arranging all the video transmissions here, which really goes very well. Thank you very much. You have done a great job.